Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for jumping on and being with us for a Grace Minute today. Today, I pray that this message encourages you and it helps you discover the path to the will of God for your life and the will of God that He has set in place that pleases Him. And that was one of the things that triggered my walk with Christ, was that I wanted to discover the will of God and for my life and what was His will that He had for the earth for us to fulfill as children of God. And so once I began that pursuit and journey, I found a lot of my answers, and all of my answers really, in Scripture. And once I began to understand and the eyes of my understanding were opened by the grace of God, I could really lay hold of what does it mean to walk in the will of God. And Philippians chapter 2, verse 12 and 13, I pray that this will give you clarity in understanding the will of God and walking in the will of God. It says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling." Now, if you read that, you look at that as this is my responsibility to work out my own salvation, to put my work in. But you have to understand in context what we're talking about here. In verse 13, it says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose." Now, what does that mean for God to work in you? That's today's Grace Minute title, is God's working in you. Once you get born again and you receive the Spirit of God on the inside of you, He begins to put and to work in our very being the desire to do His will and to fulfill His purpose. It's not so much our own effort of trying to figure it out, but it's more so believing that He is working it on the inside of us to where we desire to do God's will and we desire to fulfill His purpose. You know, Christ came to earth with the desire to fulfill God's will and just His will. He didn't have any plans to be extremely wealthy and to live on the earth and have people cherish Him and worship Him. No, He wanted to fulfill His Father's purpose and His Father's will, and that's what it means. That when you're walking this journey with the Father, He begins to work in us His will and His purpose to fulfill on this earth. I pray this has given you clarity and understanding of how to walk out the will of God for your life. Thank you guys for joining us today. We look forward to seeing and connecting with you tomorrow for another Grace Minute. Take care. We'll see you soon.